Here's a song that we all know. The man who wrote and recorded that song has written and recorded many, many songs that we know. He's had a very successful career for many years now. Before his solo career, he was most notably the lead singer of the Irish band Them. He seldom does interviews, and we are very glad that he decided to do one today. And Mr. Van Morrison is with us. Welcome to you, Van.
Thank you.
Glad you could make it out on this blustery, cold, wet day.
Better inside than I.
For sure. How different is it being Van Morrison, the artist, in 1981 than it was being Van Morrison, the artist, in the 60s, would you say?
Well, I think now there's much less emphasis on art, period, in the music business. So it's completely different.
When you were first starting out, art was more acceptable?
When I first started, there was more people like me, let me put it that way. When I started, there was more people my age writing music or writing songs or performing or whatever. And now there's less people my age. And there's less people doing creative stuff in the business, writing songs or whatever.
Brings up an
people.
Interesting point. You say the music business, and indeed it is a business. Is it difficult separating music from the business?
Yeah, it is, because the business is like a fixed system. It's, especially in 1981, it's very fixed.
Why do you suppose that is?
It's gotten that way because of economics, I guess.
How does one cope with that? Yeah, your profession is you're a musician, and being a musician, you have to cope with the business as it is. How do you handle that?
Well, in some way, you have to compromise. That's what happens.
You have compromised, do you think?
Yeah, well, if I really did what I really felt I wanted to do, then it might be sort of inaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for instance, when you make an album, you end up with 3, 4, maybe 5-minute songs, but when I actually play, just play with other musicians, things stretch out to much longer than that, for instance. And you have to edit a lot of things, and you have to make it more accessible, shape it and edit it and reshape it to make it, accessible for people to get it, in their working day or whatever. To get, a song, you have to make it more compact.
There was an edit of Summertime in England, which is a great piece from the Common One, which ran 13 minutes long on the album, and the record company released an edit of that. Does that distress you sometimes when you hear your work edited? No,
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying you have to do that.
You just have to do it.
Because it's, the kind of pace that we live at and the world that we live in, that's the way it's done.
You play quite a bit locally. You're going to be doing a number of gigs, which we'll talk about in a little while. But you haven't toured in a while. Now, I can understand the negative aspects of touring, but there also are the positive aspects of touring, the reaction you get from many people from many different cities. Do you miss that at all?
Well, you see, for me, there was more negative than positive. I take this... I take my involvement with music as a whole thing, you know what I'm saying? I was telling Tom yesterday, for instance, this album coming out, right? It's taken me 21 years to make this album, right? It's not just an album. It's not just something that I've done 6 months ago, and suddenly I come along and say, hello, I've got a record, you know what I'm saying? It's taken me 21 years to get here. I just didn't get here from last year or whatever. So I have to take my involvement in music as a whole thing.
That would be the
I
case.
don't just take it as 1981 or 1982 or 64. I got to take it as I've been in it 21 years, so it's taken me 21 years to get to this point.
So every album you do, Common One was last year. It took you 20 years to get to that point.
Yeah, it's experience, accumulated experience.
Do you see a time?
And it's sort of the going on the road thing, which I was getting back to. It's like I started going on the road when I was 15. So like by the time I was 21, I'd already had enough of touring. You know, before I even walked in a studio. That's all that I knew was touring, one-nighters. And so I've had a lot of experience of touring early on. Whereas someone coming in the business in 73, 74, 70, of course, you know, Elton John or something, he just, you know, 75 or something, he thought, well, touring is great, you know. But, you know, I've been doing it a long time, so it's a different ballgame for me, you see.
Do you see a time possibly when you'll just write and record and not tour at all or play at all? Miles Davis, for example, 7 years. Recently he came out of semi-retirement and did some gigs, but there are other artists who kind of just write and don't perform. Do you see a time coming where that may be the case with you?
It's hard to say because sometimes it all depends on a combination thing. Depends on whether you're happy with the band you've got and it's really happening. Then you can stand to do more gigs. And, you know, combat staying in hotels and the economic situation of touring, which is outrageous at the present day.
Yeah.
It all depends, you know, on a lot of different factors.
You seem to be pretty pleased with the band you have now. You've been working.
Yeah, well,
with
that's why I'm doing these gigs, you see, because we just finished the album, and it was like I realized, and we finished the album, and, you know, it was time to say goodnight, but I realized, well, I haven't really got off with a bunch of musicians like this in quite a while, so I'd like to keep it happening.
Do you ever wonder who those people are out there who are buying your records and who the people are who come to your shows? Not dwelling on it, but do you ever wonder who are these people that are Van Morrison fans?
Well, I guess they're all individuals. It's hard to say who they are. You know? I don't know.
Many of your songs are rather complex musically, intricately put together. How do you write? Do you have a musical idea, a lyrical idea? How do you put together your song?
Well, there's A, B, and C. A is where it's, you know, I get the whole idea all at once. I get the lyrics and the melody and to the song. That's inspirational writing, where that's very rare. B is where I get like a melody, and then I have a melody I'm working on, and I later work on words to go with the melody and chords. And C is the reverse of that.
The lyrics.
Where I have the lyrics first, and then I try and get a melody and chords to go with the lyrics.
Do you write on the guitar or keyboard? Or?
Guitar and piano.
Do you think about your audience at all when you're writing?
We see... No, not really, because you can't think of anything when you're writing except that. You know, I mean, it's like if you're a carpenter, and you can't build a shelf if you're thinking about who you're going to sell it to, you know what I'm saying? You have to build the shelf first, and whoever wants to buy it. It's the same thing.
Unfortunately, the reverse of that is very true these days, though. Writing and maybe carpentry is done with the audience in mind and who is going to buy it.
Yeah, well, see, I can't, I'm not like a songwriter. I don't really think of myself as a songwriter, quote unquote. I know songwriters, and I'm not one. You know, a songwriter is the guy that can come in at 9:30 in the morning and write a song on demand, and I've never been able to do that. I don't classify myself as a songwriter. I'm an inspirational writer.
A poet?
I write when I'm inspired. I wouldn't say it's a poet because, you know, sometimes poets, you know, craft things academically, what have you. But I'm just an inspirational writer. If I'm inspired, I write. If I'm not inspired, I can't write. I just, you know, it's impossible for me. So I'm not like a craftsman, which a songwriter is.
There was a period a few years ago when you, I guess you went back to Ireland for 3 years between, Wiedenflies and, I can't recall the other album, but there was a period of about 3 years. Yeah, Wiedenflies and period of transition.
Well, I wasn't 3 years. It was, you know, on and off.
And were you writing during that time? Because there was no album there for,
well, there was
3
a
years.
period where I didn't write for about 2.5 years. I mean, I didn't do anything. I didn't play guitar. I didn't even listen to music. I had overdosed. It was a period where I just completely overdosed. It was about 75, And I just had to stop. I had enough. I was mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. I just needed to get away from music completely. After going at it hard for 10 or 12 years.
And then it all came around again, and you got psyched up and ready to go back.
Well, yeah. Well, I started to, I started to like it again because when I wanted, well, at that point when I was taking the time off, I hated it. I couldn't listen to music. I didn't want to play it. I didn't want to talk to people who were in music. I just had a total aversion to everything about it. Couldn't stand it.
We're going to take a break and play some music and be back with Mr. Van Morrison on the Camel. Let's check your local movie listings. We're Camel 106, and we have Van Morrison here in the studio talking about a bunch of things. Van, on your live sets that you do, and you're going to be doing a lot of gigs coming up here, how planned are they? They seem to be kind of structured as they go along.
Well, at this point, they're planned. They're more planned now than they would be if, we just decided to throw it together and play a club. At this point, it's planned.
Mm-hmm. I know at the Palace of Fine Arts, you had what looked to be a long set list, and you were kind of...
Yeah, well, there's too many people for it not to be planned. There's 7 musicians and 3 singers.
The order isn't necessarily planned, though.
No, not the order.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. You still enjoy performing your older music? Do you still enjoy performing Gloria, or do you do it kind of for the sake of the audience? Or do you still?
Well, it's if I haven't done it for a while, then, it's it's fresh if I just haven't done it for a couple of years or something, or maybe longer. I mean, Gloria I haven't done for quite a while, so it's fresh, and I don't take it seriously, really. So.
Well, you get a kick out of it, though. I mean, you enjoy doing it. It's not a drudgery to go through the.
No, it's good, because it's not. It's so old, it's new, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Many times you do a lot of great songs that were not written by you. You've done music. Well, Stand By Me. I got a few of them written down. Mona, Not Fade Away. Sam Cooke's You Send Me. Great version of All in the Game, which is on the Into the Music album. Do some Jimmy Reed songs, Willie Dixon songs, and Buena Sera, which is Louis Prima song, which is really kind of a kick hearing that. Do you have any studio versions of these in a vault somewhere that you ever recorded? Or
there's a version of Buena Sera somewhere. It was actually from the K Sands show, I think. That's where it's from. Yeah, version from that.
Ever think of releasing any of that stuff?
Yeah, but, you forget. I mean, I went through all these tapes a couple of years ago. Went into the studio and went through, and by the time you go through everything, you realize that it would be better just to do it fresh rather than get hung up on old tapes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The flip side of a single you released from Period of Transition, Joyous Sound, flip side is something called Mechanical Bliss, which is weird, kind of strange.
Yeah, well, that was a big disappointment for me because I was trying to break into comedy then. And that's the only comedy song that I had, And I played it for Dudley Moore, and he flipped over it. I mean, he really loved it, and I thought, well, this is it, it's my big chance. I guess Warner Brothers buried it.
Yeah, it was a flip side and wasn't on any album, and I was going to ask you about that. It does show a humorous side of you, and a lot of people look at you as being the brooding musician who rarely cracks a smile, and I just don't believe that myself. But are you aware of people having that image of you, that you're the
it's
depressed
totally
poet?
It's totally wrong.
Well, why do you think they think that? Do you have any idea?
I think things have been written, Things have been written, and people get hold of certain things and say, well, they put it in a paper and it gets blown. Like, for instance, the thing about I don't do many interviews. That's wrong. I mean, I've done so many interviews you wouldn't believe it.
I think
you wouldn't believe
print interviews.
Print interviews I've done a lot. Yeah. Quite a few.
Yeah.
So these things they just get blown up, and if they're written in a certain way, it's like people always they have something about everybody, right? They have a certain thing that well, he's like that, which usually he isn't. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think
It's
they
usually-
they may get that idea too from your live shows? You're very much into your music, and the music is the bottom line in your live shows too, and that's the paramount part of the show. But do you think they expect you to be more of a?
Well, it's like, I mean, I've tried doing. I mean, if I went out and I tried comedy, for instance, what would happen? You know, I mean, it wouldn't. It would be what? Because when I've done that, it's like they think they don't know what to make of it. You see, because of the image that's out there is not conducive to doing for me to do comedy. You see, so you know what I'm saying. But I mean, I've done comedy I've been in bands where I've done actual comedy.
For example, at the Palace of Fine Arts show, a couple of people yelled out, "Van, talk to us, say something to us."
Yeah.
You hear that when they say those things.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't please everybody. You see, when I'm playing, the thing is, I've got to concentrate on the music, the arrangements, and the people, and get the moment. And it's a lot of concentration. You know what I mean? If I start developing myself as a personality, right?
Yeah.
That's another form of concentration. So in order to concentrate on that, I can't do what I do now. I would have to change completely. You know, in order for me to say, well, talk to him or whatever. I mean, that's not what I do.
Do a little rap and jump around.
Yeah, what I'm doing is playing the music, and I have to concentrate, and I have to build the energy, and I have to, you know, put a spell on it, so to speak, to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to talk, you see, because it breaks the spell. Because that's, you know, music is what I'm saying.
Is it frustrating a bit to think that a lot of people don't pick up on that and think that you're just being cold to them?
Well, you see, who are they? Different people think different things, and the audience is made up of individuals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who are they? They don't exist, right? Everybody's different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So some people like that, and some people don't. I mean, I can't please everybody. But
Exactly.
I'm not forcing it. I mean, it's like I do what I do, and if people get it, great. If they don't get it, they don't have to buy it.
Exactly. Digressing for a moment, Brown Eyed Girl was originally entitled Brown Skinned Girl, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was that too controversial at the time, or?
No, it was just a sort of mistake. I mean, that's what. It was kind of like a Jamaican song. I started, you know, calypso, Jamaican. Well, what probably now is reggae. What, you know, I want to forget about reggae because I don't like it. But that's when it slipped my mind, and I just changed the title.
You changed it.
Yeah.
Nobody asked you to change it or anything.
No.
You've worked with John Lee Hooker over the years. I had heard that he taught you some harmonica licks. Is that true?
No, that was Walter, Little Walter.
Oh, Little Walter.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I used to go for Chinese food for Walter when he was in London. We were staying at the same hotel. And he loved Chinese food, so I had to go for Chinese food. He'd teach me a couple of things.
In return for the Chinese food,
Yeah.
he'd teach you how to play the harmonica.
Exactly. But he was real hard. I mean, he was a hard cat because he played a certain way, and which was very modernized for harmonica players. He was tough.
Yeah.
He was tough.
In the past year or so, during Angelou, when you performed the song Angelou, you expressed some opinions in the break there, little ad-libs or whatever. One time, I wrote down what you said. You said, "This is the part, this is my message. It only takes a few. Everyone else will get it sooner or later." What will they get? Will they get the idea that the music is the thing, the music is the whole point, the feeling of the moment, or and the lyrics are incidental? What will eventually everybody get?
Well, you know, what I was trying to say was, like, what is behind all this stuff is, what's behind it is the message is not in actual lyrics, because lyrics are different all the time, and the message is not really in songs. The message is behind the whole thing, which is getting very, very quiet, you know. And when you get very, very quiet, you can actually hear yourself. And that's what I was trying to say, you know. When it gets so quiet, the music, I was bringing the music, I was trying to show the dynamics in the music, you know, showing that these things are expressed in music, because there's not enough education about what music is today. You know what I'm saying? Kids aren't taught what it is. And I was just trying to do a little teaching about, you know, these elements are in music because they exist in ourselves and society, right? Anger is in rock and roll music and various, you know, love, whatever. There's a lot of different energy. Well, it's all energy, but these expressions of energy are in music, right? But if you just go out and you don't know what you're doing with it, right? And you're just blasting this energy and you don't know what it is, then it becomes destructive.
It's not
So I
controlled.
was just trying to show people, hey, this is energy, and this is energy. But ultimately, the real energy that we're dealing with is the energy that's inside you that you only hear when you can get quiet. And the whole purpose of that was to make people listen to themselves,
And then you get somebody yelling out, rock and roll.
Yeah, well, that was it. I was trying to teach a bit.
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's not about rock and roll, you see.
That's another point I
not about rock and
want to get to. Another time in the break in Angela, you refer to a San Francisco music critic who can remain nameless unless you want to mention him, about rock and roll, putting your music in that bag, and you said it's not rock and roll. That's not what it's all about. Is rock and roll a bad image in your mind for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, you see, once you say rock and roll, people have an image of rock and roll, and, people start to project and relate to you in a certain way, right? Behind that word or that definition, rock and roll. People think of you in a certain way. Well, you see, with me, I was just so far away from that projection and that image, you wouldn't believe it. I mean, if anybody looked at my personal, the way I live from day to day, it's so far removed from what people think of. In fact, it's so dull and boring. You know what I'm saying? I've got nothing to do with all that rock and roll stuff at all. I mean, when I started out, right, when I was a teenager or whatever, to me, rock and roll was Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Chuck Berry and people like that. That was rock and roll. But no, what is rock and roll? Rock and roll is a mind trip. No, it's not music anymore.
Rock and roll is a bastardization in many ways. So many different forms of music have been called rock and roll. Yeah. Your music is always changing. Are they conscious or unconscious changes?
Well, at this point, it's conscious. At this point, it's conscious because I'm actually starting to work on it. It's taken me 20 years before I even started to work on music. What am I doing with it? It took me 20 years to get to that point.
What do you mean?
Well, it took me 20 years to get to the point of seeing what it was that I was involved in and what am I actually doing with it, because just you find out after a while that, it's too limiting, just album tour, and that it's too limiting. And it's not very creative, So you start exploring, what am I playing? What does a C chord mean, right? You know what I'm saying? It's not just a C chord. It means a whole lot of different things. It could mean a color. You know what I'm saying? A C chord means a certain thing. G means a certain thing. What does a song mean? What do these lyrics mean?
Do they mean something different from time to time?
Well, it took me 20 years to get to that point. That's what I'm saying. To get to the point where I'm actually involved in consciously involved in what I'm doing.
How far in advance do you work?
What do you mean?
Well, as far as writing, do you have songs that you've written and we'll get back to, or do you try to stay pretty current with what you're doing?
Well, I try to stay pretty current, but like I said before, I'm an inspirational writer. So, I've always got bits and pieces hanging around, but I never really put it together unless I've got a contract. And if I didn't have a contract to do an album, I wouldn't do it.
Until the mood hits you.
Until I only did if I needed the money, if I was starving, or if I had, I needed it for survival purposes, then I would do a record. But if I didn't have a contract, I'd never do it. Because that's a phase I've gone through years ago. I went through that phase years ago of, being successful. And then I went through the phase of being a successful songwriter. And I went through those phases, and saw what they were. It's when you see what something is, then you can drop it. If you don't see what it is, then you keep doing it,
Are you aware of what albums are selling these days and what are at the top of the charts? Do you keep abreast at all of any of that? Do you know if radio stations are playing your albums?
I don't really know. Some of the new music, I think, is interesting because I really believe that we definitely need a new music. We need something new in order to survive. You know, if music is such a big thing in everybody's life, which I think it is, you know, I think it is. So we need something different because the garbage that we keep getting, you know, it's going to make people sick, I feel, after a while. I definitely think that we need some new music. And I think the young kids they're just crying on it. I mean, they're screaming for something new. That's why you're getting all this really destructive punk music, because they're saying, we can't take it anymore. We'll do anything.
Do you like any of that?
Yeah, I like some of it. I mean, but you see, the thing is, it's turning into a destructive thing, you see? I feel like some of it is very adventurous, and I like that about it, you know?
You have a new album due out next February with some new music on it. Do you have a working title at this point?
No.
That will be out...
I mean, I don't want to tell you, Tyler, because it might change,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
between now and then.
Okay, you're going to be doing a bunch of gigs coming up here next week, Great American Music Hall, 2 nights, Tuesday and Wednesday night, 17th and 18th. Then you're going to Santa Cruz Civic Auditorium on the 3rd. On the 4th, Davis, Freeborn Hall. Then you're going to Zellerbach in Berkeley on the 5th, and then Santa Rosa, the El Rancho Tropicana on the 10th. So Van Morrison fans in the Bay Area will most definitely have a chance to check you out and see what you'll be doing. And I really want to thank you for coming by today, man.
Well, thanks. It's been good for me.
I've really enjoyed it.
Okay.
Thank you, Van. We're going to go back a number of years. Here's a lot.